Why my eyes, sir? You've never used them before.
Saw the Terrence Howard podcast and I have a few thoughts. Is he a madman or a genius? My opinion is neither, but let me unpack this in a very brief analysis for you. So, right out of the gate, Terrence wants you to believe his memories go as far back as the womb.
I didn't come into this world the way everybody else does, I don't think. I used to think that everybody had the similar experience, but like if I asked you what was your first memory in life, what would it be?
I don't think I know.
My first memory was almost like when you're dreaming and you're falling and you hit the bottom and you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first memory, but I didn't wake up here. I was inside my mother's womb.
A super popular idea dating back to like the 1930s, with renewed population in the 60s and 70s. The idea that the farther back your memories go measures how intelligent you are. And if your memories go to the womb, well, then you're practically superhuman.
Then ultimately you get ready to come out. I remember all of that. I remember being born, I remember being circumcised, I remember the whole nine, and the proof of it was when my wife Mira that you just met, when she was 6 months pregnant with my son Kieran. I wanted to prove to her what I was talking about, so I put a light on her stomach every day at 6 o'clock at night. And I would move that light back and forth and I'd put a song on for a week straight. And then when I put the light there, he started following the light.
Prenatal memory is a real thing, but not in the way that he is explaining it here. Humans exhibit prenatal short-term memory starting at about the 6th month of gestation. You can introduce stimuli and the baby will remember it in the short term. Long-term episodic memory doesn't develop in the human brain until like the 4th year of life, and it's related to the development of the hippocampus and understanding language and being verbal, etc. and so on. Short-term prenatal memory has literally nothing to do with intellect. Terrence holds superior intelligence in very high regard, and even tries to make a genius baby himself with his own kid. Another popular pseudo-scientific idea from like 100 years ago.
And I would move that light back and forth and I'd put a song on for a week straight. And then when I put the light there, he started following the light. And for the next 2 months, we did this every night, and he would go all the way around her belly.
The notion of creating genius babies is related to eugenics. There was a man named Robert K. Graham, a eugenicist, a multimillionaire, and an evolutionist. His big fear was that mankind was in danger because natural selection had stopped working on human beings, which he explained in his book, penned in 1971, titled The Future of Man. He explained that over thousands of years, natural selection had strengthened the human gene pool, allowing intelligent and strong people to reproduce, while allowing the weak to go extinct. But once humans took mastery over their natural environment and created better living conditions, humans slipped off the evolutionary track and allowed quote-unquote retrograde humans to reproduce. In this dysgenic crisis, all that can save us is intelligent selection. He explains, quote, "Our best specimens must have more children," end quote. Graham started a sperm bank with the seed of Nobel Prize winners and other younger scientists. He placed advertisements in Mensa magazine and related publications. This idea quickly caught on and fueled the momentum to create designer genius babies, a process that begins in the womb. Francis Galton, cousin to Charles Darwin, was all about eugenics and creating designer babies, and published books and treatises that talked about creating quote-unquote illustrious men who could pass these traits down to their descendants and create a quote-unquote highly gifted race. American geneticist and eugenicist H.J. Muller devised a scheme to create men like Isaac Newton, Leonardo da Vinci, Beethoven, and for Muller, especially Karl Marx, by inseminating thousands of women with the seed of a single exceptional man, which he wrote about in his book Out of the Night, penned in 1936. Superior intellect was probably the most important quality, as well as, according to Muller, comradeliness, as all these guys were globalists, socialists, and communists. In that same vein, and cut from the same cloth, in esoteric occult circles and secret societies, Freemasonic secret societies, genius is vitally important. It's what sets you apart from the herd. Occultists see genius as the separator between animal man and divine man, between the profane and the highly evolved enlightened ones. Crowley and the Golden Dawn called the genius the higher inner self, or the holy guardian angel. Blavatsky called the genius the silent watcher, or the great master. So, for the enlightened esotericist, genius was a divine gift from the cosmos that made you a superior human, destined to be the Earth's divine council, who will govern the Earth and all of mankind. And the creation of designer genius babies that you can make yourself, do it yourself at home, became wildly popular in the 1970s. They were recruiting kids through these quote-unquote gifted youth programs, separating kids out into special classes at school through Mensa and all of that. In the US, Mensa at that time was founded by a man named Peter Sturgeon. He was a member of the American Communist Party and later became a member of the very Trotskyist Socialist Workers' Party, moved to New York and held Mensa meetings there, and later left the US and worked for both the World Health Organization and the United Nations, so that should give you a clearer picture of all of that mess. Mensa, in Latin, meaning table, as in round table or round table society, was initially a high IQ society that began after World War II in Britain with the intent to find the top 2% most intelligent in the population and then provide this list to the government. In an article in The Washingtonian, quote, founded in 1946 by scientist Lancelot Ware and lawyer Roland Barrel, the pair hoped it would become a United Nations-like organization that would save the world, end quote. In an article in the New York Times regarding Mensa's founders, quote, the founders planned to forward a list of the 600 brightest Britons to the government, which could thus have easy access to the best minds in the time of crisis, that the world should be run not by the well-born or the well-connected, but by a scientifically selected aristocracy of the smart, end quote.
And this little boy, first thing he wanted to do is see light. He loved lights from that early stage, and I can ask him the square root of 2, the square root of 5, the square root of that, the square root of pi, and he will run it off.
But the notion that Terrence's memories, which are highly detailed episodic events with deep meaning that go back to the womb, is utter nonsense, and I'm not buying it for 1 second. He continues his story saying that at 5 years old, he had another dream. What? Was that a slip? I think most definitely it was. He messed up his own story and he didn't even realize it. Was it a dream or a memory? Get your story straight, man.
And then when I was about 5 years old, I had another dream, and there was a being there. I knew his voice, but I did not know who it was, but I felt confident and comfortable. And as we moved along this dark blue fluid path, and then when we got to the end of it, he said to me, if you could have anything in the world, what would it be? I didn't have much, but I said to him, I want to know how everything works. And at that moment, he used his left hand and he opened up the door, and there was this mansion.
In this dream, he describes this entity with a familiar voice but hidden face that guides him to a palace that holds all the knowledge in the universe. He now has access to this knowledge, which he says he can prove is true. He can prove that he knows this stuff by the 97 patents he claims to hold.
And he would hand me these shapes, and each shape was different and amazing, and I woke up from that dream. But after that moment, anytime something strange would happen in a dream, I had the powers of inception. Anytime I would be naked at school, I would say, I'm not naked. I must be dreaming. And immediately I would run out of the school or run out of wherever I was, and I would find that mansion again. And I had access to all the knowledge. Proof of it is the 97 patents that I have now.
The power of inception is the ability to enter the subconscious mind of another person and, through their dreams, implant ideas like a seed. This concept was made famous in a movie called Inception.
When we're asleep, our mind can do almost anything. Well, imagine you're designing a building, right? You consciously create each aspect. And sometimes it feels like it's almost creating itself, if you know what I mean. Now, in a dream, our mind continuously does this. We create and perceive our world simultaneously, and our mind does this so well that we don't even know what's happening. That allows us to get right in the middle of that process.
Is Terrence claiming he now has the power to plant idea seeds in other people? No, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is he had the power to control his own dreams. That's not inception. That's lucid dreaming.
Anytime I would be naked at school, I would say, I'm not naked. I must be dreaming. And immediately I would run out of the school or run out of wherever I was, and I would find that mansion again.
So let's spend a minute with the patents. And I'm not a patent expert. I've never invented anything in my life. But if you look at these patents, well, first of all, you can't patent an idea. You can't patent a word or a phrase or even a concept. It has to be a novel invention. I looked it up and I can't find any evidence of 97 patents. I find, a couple dozen or so. A lot of them were granted, but many of them still just applications. And they all classify as toys. These are patents for building block sets, lighting systems, and a propulsion system for a drone. For example, this patent application for a modified platonic solid building block, which hasn't been granted, by the way, it's just an application from 2013, is for a toy, for a building block design. Quote, description, the present invention relates to building blocks, and specifically to magnetic educational toy blocks, end quote. Out of all these patents, no novel scientific concepts are being presented here. They're all just toys. His transcendental lighting application is a toy. It's tetrahedron-shaped building blocks that light up. The patents for his projectile propulsion system for his drone, which is classified as a toy, seems sophisticated, and the wording here is extensive. I mean, look at this. It goes on and on and on ad nauseum. But since 2021, it is just sitting in application phase. It has not been granted. So I think you get the idea. What he is saying is proof of his access to this great divine knowledge are the supposed 97 patents. Was just a smattering of a few patents of some toys. This is his proof. So is he crazy? Is the man out of his mind? I don't think Terrence is crazy. And while my master's is in psychology, and I want to emphasize that I am in no way qualified, nor do I have sufficient data to give any expert level assessment here. All I can give you is my opinion, but to me, what's going on with Terrence Howard seems pretty simple and straightforward. What it's looking like to me is Terrence is a grandiose narcissist, which is a personality disorder. And all the qualifiers are there. Childhood trauma, violence in the home, abuse and neglect, mother played favorites with other siblings, etc., and so on.
Now, we were really poor. My dad had just gotten out of prison for manslaughter. And I went off and became an actor because my mother wanted my little brother to be an actor. And I thought if I became an actor, I would get my mother's affection. It wasn't until my mother was dying. She told me the reason that she was babying Antonio was because he had asthma. And my father always questioned whether it was his son or not because he looked so much like her family. And I realized, my God, if I had followed my proper course, I could have saved my mother because the knowledge that I had, I had the grand unified field equation.
Is he schizophrenic or on the spectrum or any of the other Axis 1 disorders? I'm thinking probably not. I don't see much evidence for that. Even when he starts getting into his crank science, nonsensical and slightly paranoid word salad mumbo jumbo, the man is just a standard issue, textbook, grandiose narcissist. And he is spending an extraordinary amount of energy trying to prove to anyone who will listen the persona, the facade that he has created of himself. He wants to prove himself externally, probably to garner for himself an endless stream of narcissistic supply, and maybe in there somewhere to validate for himself an identity that he seems to find valuable and worthy. Because if you believe it, then he can believe it. So what's he trying to prove? He's trying to prove that he is first and foremost an extremely unique, very special, and very gifted person who has an outmatched superior intellect with access to secret knowledge, and in his greatness, he plans to break the delusions that the world has always been under since the dawn of time. He claims his ideas are his own, and it's his mission in life to change the world. This display of arrogance is just stunning. But is it crazy or is it desperate? And and I lean toward the latter. But is he saying anything real? Everything Terrence introduces in this talk is New Age pseudoscience nonsense. Every person he names and all the charts and videos he shared, all of it is New Age mumbo-jumbo. He throws out words and phrases that sound scientific and intelligent.
And I realized, my God, if I had followed my proper course, I could have saved my mother, because the knowledge that I had, I had the grand unified field equation.
But what Terrence is engaging in is scientism, not science. New Age mysticism, not material science. For example, Walter Russell, whose praises he sings the whole way through this podcast, and then claims he had the exact same ideas as Walter Russell gained from access to his dream mansion that holds all the knowledge of the secrets of the universe. He says he studied under Michael Hudak, the president of the University of Science and Philosophy.
As I moved along, I got in touch with Michael Hudak. He was the president of the University of Science and Philosophy, because I was studying a guy named John Keeley, who had worked with frequency back in the 1870s, had built the first what do they call it? Self-sustaining engine back in 1872, but he wouldn't tell people how he built it. And I was watching a program with Del Pons, and somebody in the audience said, "Doesn't John Keeley's work remind you a lot of Walter Russell?" And a bell went on. And so I got in touch with the University of Science and Philosophy after watching some stuff about Walter Russell. And Michael Hudak, took me under his wing and started talking to me. But he was more into the philosophy. But my intention was to rebuild the periodic table, build a new periodic table.
The University of Science and Philosophy is a New Age facility founded by Walter Russell. Walter Russell was a New Age mystic involved in the New Thought movement from the early 19th century. The New Thought movement held the idea that the universe is its own conscious infinite intelligence, and that true human selfhood is divine. And humans can tap into this cosmic intelligence, and with the power of their own thoughts, they can make anything they want happen for themselves, like healing diseases or garnering great wealth for themselves. Incidentally, the prosperity gospel that you find in the Pentecostal churches comes from the New Thought movement. The prosperity gospel is the New Thought movement brought into the Christian community sometime in the mid-19th or late 19th century. And Walter Russell subscribed to an electric universe. He has no scientific training whatsoever. None. Zero. And Walter Russell was a cult leader who, like every cult leader that ever lived on planet Earth, claimed he had a transformational event, which he wrote about in his book, The Story of My Illumining. He claims that out of the clear blue sky one day, he was cosmically illuminated, given a great cosmic consciousness, and suddenly could perceive all motion in the universe and was aware of all things. He's written several books, all very culty, New Age, pseudoscientific nonsense, which he called Russell Cosmogony, in which he attempted to define a brand new concept of the physical universe. Russell claimed to be able to prove his nonsense in a variety of experiments in his lab, but when he was asked to replicate them in front of, real scientists, he was not able to do so and made up, all kinds of crazy excuses. He wrote very extremely detailed explanations of his experiments with electricity and electric coils, which his group publishes in a quarterly magazine called Fulcrum. On the pages of this publication are diagrams and all kinds of scientific-sounding explanations of things extensively worded to make them seem like legitimate concepts. Or maybe they're just so complicated and difficult to read that nobody paid close attention. But it's nothing more than New Age pseudoscientific hogwash. But if you take Russell's home study course, it promises to reveal the God within you and to give you oneness with the universal collective force or universal intelligence, which they call God. The real periodic table arranges the elements by atomic weight and chemical property. Walter Russell attempted to rebuild the periodic table using his junk ideas, which nobody in the field took seriously, and which included things like music of the spheres. The music of the spheres is a metaphysical concept that dates back to a time when Pythagoras and Aristotle believed that, math and octaves explained the entire universe, and that celestial bodies make their own harmonious musical vibration, like the notes on a guitar string, that we can't actually hear because it's naturally noise canceling. And next, Terrence goes into his rejection of gravity and his belief in the electric universe, which again, he claims he can prove is true with his many, many patents and his crude computer simulations that he had other people program for him. So everything Terrence is doing, everything he's getting into is literally copying Walter Russell. Everything from his linchpin turbines in the electric universe, denying gravity, writing all of these patents, which Walter Russell was insane with his love for patents. Rewriting the periodic table, everything he's doing to the letter is copying Russell's work. And the electric universe at its core is just theosophy. Blavatsky describes the divine electricity, the fire of life, the Fohat, the androgynous energy, the unified light of the unmanifest logos, the spirit of electricity, which she writes with a capital E, which is the life of the universe. Quote, "It binds all cosmic energies on unseen and manifest planes, and thereby impresses upon matter the ideas of the universal mind. Fohat is the intelligence in cosmic electricity." So there you have it. And the electric universe culty stuff has gained a renewed popularity due in large part to a group called the Thunderbolts Project. These people have taken the Platonian, Atlantean mythos, where Saturn was once our sun that ruled over a primordial Earth, and they've added a new twist, claiming the plasma and the cosmos caused these strange planetary formations, which moved around and changed all the time, that were misinterpreted by early humans who mistook them for the gods. So everyone Terrence mentions, not a single one of them were scientists by any stretch of the word. They were frauds, they were cult leaders, they were new age mumbo-jumbo pseudo-science peddlers. They were engaged in scientism, not science. Terrence mentioned John Keeley.
Because I was studying a guy named John Keeley, who had worked with frequency back in the 1870s, had built the first what do they call it? Self-sustaining engine back in 1872, but he wouldn't tell people how he built it. And I was watching a program with Del Pons, and somebody in the audience said, "Doesn't John Keeley's work remind you a lot of Walter Russell?" And a bell went on.
John Keeley was a known fraud. He was a self-proclaimed inventor who perpetuated a scam where he convinced a whole bunch of people to invest in the manufacturing of his quote-unquote etheric force machine, which was nothing more than directed compressed air. And he knew what it was, but he was selling it as something else. John Keeley also claimed he could create enough fuel from a quart of water to run a train from Philadelphia to New York, which is funny because Terrence made a very similar claim. And then Terrence goes on to mock God and the Bible. And, grandiose narcissists tend to have great difficulty with the notion of a God greater than themselves. And it's evident that Terrence has never studied scripture or even understands its basic precepts.
How have we limited ourselves? You take Noah having 3 sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham, and one was black, one was Asian, and one was white. Does that make sense to you? But we subscribe to that. We ascribe to that dogma, and everybody's entitled to whatever opinion they want to have. I don't think that opinion is right.
Noah's 3 sons went on to populate different areas of the earth, which many, many centuries later became those ethnicities, but they certainly didn't begin that way.
Man, don't turn my phone off. Don't do that. Every time I get ready, because I know they're watching me right now, and they're mad at me.
Who's they?
The people that want that. Our entire world economy is based off of the politicians and the authorities that give the politicians their accreditation. And those authorities, those universities, are all based, their entire curriculum is based off the Platonic solids. And our world economy is based off of 1 × 1 = 1.
You think they'd fuck with your phone?
Oh, I'm sure of it, because now I have to turn it off.
Do you ever drop your phone? You ever drop your phone?
I've dropped my phone a number of times, but...
You ever think that might be what's going on with your phone?
And then I buy another phone, and the same thing happens.
And he sounds a little paranoid here, which would lend to him being, crazy or schizophrenic or whatever, but in my opinion, it lends more to his grandiose thinking and great self-importance, coupled with him, just not being very bright. He thinks he's so very important, and his ideas are so threatening that, his phones are bugged and tapped. Or at least he wants you to believe that. Kind of hard to tell where he's going with it. So Terrence doesn't seem crazy to me. He seems like a grandiose narcissist who's hustling everybody who will listen and probably needs an identity that makes him look very, very special. He seems smitten with scientism and New Age occultism, and instead of giving credit where it's due, he's just stealing their ideas and making them his own. He seems too haughty to submit to the real God and is working toward becoming a god of his own making.